Hey YouTube, JGreen302. Guess we'll call this miscellaneous updates, lessons learned, whatever the hell you want to call it. Three major things I guess I want to revisit. I'm going to start with the solar panel stuff. I put out a video. I was working on 12-volt solar panel system, set everything up, built my own control panels, and it worked beautifully for a year. I mean, it just, every day it did everything I wanted. I didn't even have to go and look at it. It just worked. Beautiful, nice, passive energy intake system with, you know, batteries in case there was ever a problem. Beautiful. And then I think that was not this year, it was last year. So last year I set about that project. To me it was a college class, and I was the instructor, I was the one buying the materials, and I was the one teaching myself. So this spring came up and I was sitting there thinking, you know, probably ought to pick up a few more panels, do an upgrade. It's been a year, it's been working beautifully, so I bought a few more panels. Well, ran into some interesting engineering issues. I'm not an expert at anything. I want to talk about lessons learned. So, in the initial build, and I'm going to try and... This was the wiring that I chose to use. And this, if it'll focus, kind of gives you an idea of it's copper braided wire. I don't know the exact gauge on this, but you can kind of see. And for the three panels that I was using, and for the way I built my control system, this was sufficient. It worked beautifully. Everything was great. Like I said, the first year was beautiful. But again, this is lessons learned. So that wasn't working. Basically what had happened was the power intake was exceeding the cabling. With DC, you need to have thick cables. They'll tell you to use 2-gauge, super huge cabling to attach the batteries to the inverter, because you're going to be pulling a lot of power. You don't want to have loss. So the thick cables do that for you. You can get away with charging the batteries on a much smaller cable, but it's not the right way to do it. You know, small cables will get warm. You're going to get a lot of loss. Just not a smart way to do it. But the way I approached this was from a cobbled together point of view. If things went bad and I needed to get power, I could go steal car batteries and get a battery bank. I could steal starter cables. I could build the connectors for the batteries. I could steal extension cords to go from the solar panels to the charge controller. And I really wanted to approach this from an ad hoc point of view, not from an electrician's per code DC breaker box point of view, because it had to be a cobbled together system for quick breakdown, so I could haul it out of here if I needed to. And it also had to be a project based on, if you have the skills, you could go out and pull this stuff together. Because if things just went totally apeshit, there's houses with solar panels on it. If you can find a ladder and you've got a wrench, you can go get panels. They're out there. So I was thinking about it along those terms. And then year 2, after some lessons, like when I upgraded, I had some regular home Romex. And this is the Romex that most of your outlets are wired. 3-strand, one with a ground, white and black, and it's solid core, and you can kind of get an idea of the dimensions. And quickly, no good. Had to go to this stuff. And let me tell you, this stuff is a pain in the ass, but it's solid core. And that, that is a lot thicker. I just checked. This is a 10 gauge solid copper. And what I've done is I have rewired everything with this 10 gauge. Now this 10 gauge is carrying the load for the system, and it's doing wonderful. All the meters and all the numbers are telling me that all of a sudden the system is just humming along. It's beautiful. What's the point? Well, lessons learned. If you wish to play with solar, the hard part is going to be biting the bullet on the expensive, bigger gauge copper. The bigger, the more solid the wires for everything involved, the better the efficiency of the system. DC current and the amperage loves this. Point 2, solid connections. You don't take something like this and a stranded, and if you put a wire nut on and you kick a wire or anything comes loose and it slides down, gets a little loose, it will melt. It will literally melt the twist on plastic piece, because it's going to generate heat, it's going to get hot, and I've literally melted 2. Solid, absolutely rock solid connections are a critical when you hit 20 amps or more. I'd actually say 15. You have to be very careful. You step into a, you get 300 watt panels, you can cobble together some crap, and it really doesn't matter how you wire it, because the levels are so low to the point where just about anything will work. And then you hit that intermediate area where this becomes very important. Tight connections. All of a sudden you have to step your game up. Your game, your gear, just about everything. So I just wanted to mention that. And then in hindsight, if I had it to do all over again, which I do, I would go with 12 volt or 24 volt panels instead of 12 volt. Reason: 24 volt panels are more efficient. Per panel you get more wattage. Cost a little bit more. It costs a significant amount more. But you've got 12, 24, and 48 volt panels. 12 volts for when you want to dick around and learn, and you're a hobbyist, or you want to put a single panel on your RV, or you want to, oh look, I'm being a little hobbyist like I did. Hey, 12 volt panels are beautiful. The cost per the installation, you have a built-in ceiling. 24 volts, suddenly you're stepping into, okay, we're getting serious about power. We have to change what we're doing. We have to change the way we're doing our batteries. We have to change a lot of things, but they're more efficient. They're a lot more power production. It's where you have to start stepping up your gear. This is where you start spending a lot of money. But to spend the money once, the first time, 24 volts is the way to go. 48 volts is what we've got out on our farm with a $130,000 system. This is where you have super thick cables and you're handling massive power. I can build something with a 48. If I had to steal 48 watt panels, I could reconfigure some batteries, and as long as the charge controller could play with 48 volts, beautiful. The design work and all the knowledge that I've picked up, 12, 24, 48, it doesn't matter what you give me, I have to use one. You can't really cross mix this stuff. But 24 volts is the way to go. If I had it all to do over, I'd do the 24 volt panels. My charge controller can do 24 volts, and I'd reconfigure my batteries. And then the only thing I'm left with is eating the high dollar cost of copper. I think I got a 25-foot roll of this for like $42 or $48 at Home Depot. The price of copper is freaking insane. And one of the things that I started realizing is that the ability to work with bigger gauge copper, the ability to make those connections, that material, the hardware, whatever, however you choose to work with this stuff, is going to be critical if you're going to cobble something together. If you don't have something to work with this stuff, you're going to wind up burning some things up, namely whatever you put this stuff in, because if it starts to short out or if there's loose connections, you're going to melt stuff. 2, having copper cabling of any kind, battery cables, jumper cables, big, long, heavy copper cables for, your panels. You might have to run them out somewhere and run cabling. These materials and supplies, because of dumbasses stealing copper everywhere, has driven the cost up and the availability. It's not like you can go pick this stuff up. You better have a friend or an electrician or somebody that's doing a big commercial job and start grabbing scrap. Having that stuff somewhere in a readily accessible area, or just for the project, priceless. But 24 volts, and I'm going to have to start thinking about this. The 12 volt system, I can duplicate it with the same footprint, go to 24 volts, and do so much more. And I've invested as far as I'm going to invest in the 12 volt system. I can keep it, I can run it as a separate system, I can move it over to the side or whatever, but I think I'm going to go 24 volt. So that's our lessons learned on the solar panel stuff. And of course, more to learn. Subject 2. I talked about this before. This is honey. This one was purchased, I believe. Oh, it was purchased there. Well, this is the same stuff you can find at Sam's Club. And you'll note it looks like honey. And it flows like honey. And this is worthless. This has been sterilized. Every single piece of good quality that this honey should have doesn't exist anymore. They have pasteurized it. It does not act like honey. It does not really behave like honey. It has none of the properties of honey. It has none of the pollen. It has none of the enzymes. It has nothing. 85% of the honey tested in most grocery stores have absolutely no nutritional value. And honey is a miracle food. There's been reports that there's honey down in Australia that the people in that area aren't getting cancer, and everybody started to figure out why. They found out it was the honey. The bees are pollinating in a certain type of plant, and these folks don't have cancer. That's the value of the pollen and the enzymes. And good old Uncle Sam is making damn sure you don't get it. So, I went and found a local honey. Notice it's from a home printer. Looks close to the same, but there is it's not this crystal pure. It's a little bit thicker, and it I guess if it got a little bit colder, it might get a little solid, and that's what honey should do. It should get solid. But I'm starting to even question this, because it may have been cleaned and strained, but I don't know if it was pasteurized. It doesn't indicate it, and without going and actually getting a hold of these people, I wouldn't know. So I'm kind of curious about that, but I will show you this, because I found this the other day and I really wanted to do this. This is what real honey looks like. And you will notice it isn't doing what the other ones are doing. And you probably can't pick this up, but this honey is rough honey. It has not been pasteurized. It has not been anything. It's like they scraped this right off the hive. And this has all the enzymes, this has all the pollen, this has everything. Honey in the rough. Finally, honey the way it's supposed to be. It took me almost a year to find this, without actually going and finding somebody that's got a beehive, which I'm still working on. I wanted you to see the difference between real honey and the crap you were being given. I'd much rather have the real deal. Third point. A lot of people are going to like this, a lot of people are going to hate this. Ooh. 1 ounce solid gold. 1 ounce solid silver. There you go, folks. Ooh. So what's the point? Well, lessons learned. 1 ounce Krugerrand solid gold. When I first started getting gold coins, I was like, the first one was like, wow. For once, I'm actually holding a real gold coin. Never seen one, never really held one, never nothing. Fascinated. Had it sitting on my desk for a while. That little allure of gold. And I started picking up silver. And I was thinking, wow, look at this. You know, this is starting to look like the Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, let's talk about this. I got a lot of guns that are worth more than this damn thing. I've got a couple, and anymore, you know what this is? It's a damn coin. I put it in a box and I forget about it. But if you have 10, and gold's worth $1,500, you've got 15 grand sitting in a box that you're not thinking about. It's a hell of an interesting savings plan. Can't eat it. I wouldn't barter with it. It's not really a shit hits the fan thing. Neither is this. I mean, if I've got a couple of cans of food and you offer me one of these when $20 won't buy you a single can of food, neither will 100. Why would I barter you one of these for my food? Ain't gonna happen. To me, it's not really a barter item. You bring one of these to the table, I might trade you a can of food for one of these. Maybe. But that's about it. So as a barter item, is this important? No. Neither is this. Not in my opinion, because you can't hand it to me and get your value out of it in a barter situation. So what is the value of this? Well, the value of these is if money goes in the toilet, it's something that can hold value. It's something that is not in a bank. It's something that is not in paper currency. It's not in some stock market. It's not something go away. You hold an ounce. You can defend an ounce. You have an ounce. When everything straightens out, or if you decide to go to Mexico or whatever, or Canada, suddenly you have currency capability. It's wealth in a small package. And you take a couple of these and you can put them in your pocket and you can walk around. I mean, you can walk around technically with 10 or 20 or 30 grand worth of tangible cash. And when things straighten out, guess what? You still have tangible cash. If the dollar goes in the toilet and you're sitting on drug dealer wads, worthless is worthless. So all that cash does you no good. If they shut the banks down and all your money's in the banks, you've got nothing. The only money you have is the money you can defend. That's the purpose of this, is to, it's like a long-term financial safety net. It has nothing to do with barter, nothing to do with trade, nothing to do with anything. The only note that I will make is if you have 10 of these or 20 of these, there's an interesting little aspect to our financial system. If I give you 10 grand in cash, let's say you got a mobile home and a piece of property. Let's say you want $30,000. If I pay you $30,000 cash, or write a check, or get a mortgage, it makes no difference, and I hand you the equivalent of basically a transaction for 30 grand in cash, you owe taxes on that 30 grand because you used a debt instrument. What if I had 30 of these? 22. Equivalent of roughly 30 grand. And I take 22 of these and I say, how about I'll trade you 22 of these for that property? This is not cash, according to the IRS. This is property. If I trade my property for your property, I did not use a debt instrument. There is no taxable transaction. Think about that. There's no taxable transaction. I traded property of this value for property of this value. We just swapped. There's no net earnings. There's no net income. There's no nothing. How can you tax nothing? Why do you think they don't like these too much? Thought I'd mention that. Otherwise, these were the 3 points I wanted to cover. I wanted to mention these things. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.